Today, we become legends.
So this might be the earliest rant I've ever released, but also one of the most justified. Hun Batz only released a few days ago as of writing, but boy has he been making a splash on the battleground. The god has a 66% win rate in ranked right now, which is noticeably higher than even Aladdin at 62% and obviously way above the average. Granted, that data could be skewed slightly as probably only bad players are not banning this god right now, but in theory, those bad players should also be playing against other bad players. You can also make the argument that newer releases perform better because people aren't used to playing against them, but in my opinion, that's also a fairly negligible factor because people are usually not used to playing as the god either, and we've seen plenty of new releases in Smite 2 underperform in terms of win rate, like Kabrakan and Vulcan as two of the more recent ones, which have some of the worst ranked win rates in the game right now despite being new, so it's clearly not just an issue of the god being new to the game. Hun Batz is clearly an outlier. No god that is even close to balanced should have a 66% win rate in ranked. There can be fluctuations based on factors like only specialists playing the gods, which can boost their win rate higher than it really should be, even if they're fairly balanced. But if anything for Batz right now, you'd think it would be the reverse, as he's new to the game and new gods tend to be widely picked even by people who don't have a great understanding of the kit. Despite that, he still has the highest win rate in the game by a wide margin, with the only other god coming close being Aladdin, who is also completely busted. But why is that? Well, the +1 changes that Batz got coming into Smite 2 were pretty damn crazy. His 1 dealing damage and slowing on takeoff as well as landing is certainly useful, as is the strength on his passive and being able to teleport while channeling his 2. But the main crazy +1 he got was that his 2 now shreds 24 protections during the channel, which even by Smite 1 standards would be insanely good. In Smite 2, flat penetration is less available on items and protection auras for backliners don't exist, so it's even more crazy. This combined with the already pretty OP build with all Swan Spear and Stone of Binding allows him to shred off 59 protections, which is almost everything a backliner has. Most non-tanks have around 70 physical protections at level 20, 70 protections reduces damage you take by 42%. Hun Batz with this build and his 2 brings you down to 11 protections, which only reduces damage you take by 10%. Yeah, you're effectively increasing all your damage to squishies by 32% with this build, and you could even build something like Transcendence to bring them down to basically 0 protections, or even Void Shield, since percentage reduction applies first before flat reduction, and so you take 15% off of 70, then take 59 off of the result, which is also pretty much close to true damage against backliners. Also, quick shout out to my second channel where I post gameplays and guides. There'll be a Hun Batz guide going up there fairly soon, and as this video goes live, there's also a Hun Batz gameplay of me destroying with the build that I talk about in this guide. I feel like I don't shout out the second channel enough, so definitely head over there, give it a subscribe, check out the videos, and also check out my Twitch at twitch.tv/intersectyt. A lot of the gameplay videos on the second channel come from the Twitch, so I'd appreciate if you check that out as well. But back to the video. This single change is ridiculously impactful, but probably goes under the radar a bit compared to some other +1 changes like Hades ult, for example, that is immediately having an obvious impact on his performance. All this +1 does for Hun Batz is change some numbers that most players who aren't really clued in won't notice. They'll just get one shot by Batz out of nowhere and not realize that it's because of this +1. It wasn't just +1 changes though. Hun Batz also launched with an aspect, which while cool and a good idea in general, I think, is one of those aspects that is just a straight up upgrade no matter where you're playing him. This aspect reduces the damage on his 2, but makes it stun and trades the bonus strength on his passive for a slow instead. The slow is pretty nice, but the main thing here is making the 2 stun. Giving a god one of the best CCs in the game for only a small reduction in damage is just always going to be good. But it's even more ridiculous because it allows him to proc Stone of Binding in his base kit, which as we've discussed before is insane for the crazy flat shred numbers he can achieve with it. Without this aspect, Hun Batz can only proc Binding with his ultimate, which makes it a pretty useless item for him. For Binding to be good, you need a basic ability to proc it for you on a lower cooldown, and this aspect allows for that, which is just crazy. Sure, you lose some damage for this, but that is pretty much entirely made up for by being able to proc Stone of Binding and shredding off 15 additional protections, so going for the aspect is just a no-brainer on Batz. It's pretty much a free stun added to your kit for very little cost. Oh, and I forgot to mention that this ability is also on a base 8-second cooldown for seemingly no reason at all. Sure, it's the same cooldown as Smite 1, but in that game this ability is honestly pretty mid, as all it does is damage while making you vulnerable due to the long channel time that can be stunned out, or just lets you get shredded as you're basically a sitting duck during the cast time, with the only benefit being knockup immunity. In Smite 2, however, this is one of the best abilities into the game due to the previously mentioned 24 flat shred and the aspect being just better than the base kit, so it pretty much always has a stun attached to it as well. How on earth they thought just adding 24 flat shred and a stun to this but keeping the cooldown the same was a good idea is beyond me. Like sure, Hebo's 1 is on a 4-second cooldown in Smite 1 and all it does is damage in a close range cone, so sure, let's port it to Smite 2, leave it on 4 seconds, but also make it stun and execute enemies below 30% health. Sounds great. Base 8 seconds is just ridiculous for an ability this powerful, and given how much cooldown rate you could easily fit into a jungle build, it's more like 4 seconds at full build, and this is also being reduced by Bumper's Hammer, so really it's more like 3 seconds if you AA cancel. For an ability that does this much stuff, that is just not okay. And then of course, Hun Batz still has all the stuff he always had in Smite 1, like very high chase down potential and engage potential through his monkey teleport and jump, as well as one of the most broken teamfight CC abilities in the whole game. It's a bold call, but based on my own experience, what others in very high-end ranked queues have told me, and his win rate stats, Hun Batz might be eclipsing Aladdin as the best god in the game right now. He also plays 3 roles with the aspect considered, with him being an insane jungler and solo laner, and even having solid support viability now thanks to his extra stun and his always powerful disruption in teamfights thanks to his ultimate. Hopefully we at the very least get some major nerfs for this guy in the OB3 patch, which is less than a week away at this point, but he's so broken that I could definitely see them releasing a hotfix before then to bring him down a bit, then looking at a more comprehensive balance pass for him in the main OB3 update. In terms of what he needs, the protection shred on his 2 absolutely needs to come down. 24 flat shred is just absolutely ridiculous, especially so in Smite 2 due to the lack of flat pen and protection auras. Take this down to 15 or even 10 and it would still be very useful. Then also nerf the base cooldown to at least 10 seconds. It's ridiculous that an ability that does this much stuff has a base 8-second cooldown. Sure, it scales down from 12 to 8 seconds, but given it's the ability you rank first, it has an 8-second cooldown for the vast majority of the game. Make this 12 down to 10 or even 14 down to 10 if you wanted to nerf it harder. 8 seconds made sense for this in Smite 1 where it didn't stun you and delete half your protections. It makes no sense here. Then you also need to look at the aspect in my opinion. I like the design of it overall and I think giving his 2 a stun is workable. It's interesting that he has some solo and support viability that he wouldn't have had without this aspect, but there needs to be more of a trade-off for it. There's multiple ways you could go about this, such as nerfing the damage of the 2 directly, probably hitting the base damage as you barely lose anything from that with the aspect, but you do lose a good bit of strength scaling. Probably the more sensible approach is just to remove the shred from his 2 entirely if you have the aspect, which of course indirectly nerfs his overall damage output across the board. You can also look at other parts of his kit, like taking away the 1.2x damage from his passive boosted basic attack if he has the aspect, or even removing the strength scaling entirely from his ultimate, though that will probably be a last resort if they really can't balance the aspect at all in any other way. As it stands, the aspect for Batz is just better than the base kit, which is a problem. Aspects are meant to be alternate kits that are useful for a playstyle shift, not something you just always put on because it's just straight up better in every situation at every role than the base kit is. The design can work and I think it's interesting, but he needs more of a damage sacrifice for going aspect. But that's enough ranting for one day. What do you think about Hun Batz? Is he the most broken thing to ever grace Smite 2, or are people overreacting and things will clear up after people get used to him? Let me know down below and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day and peace out, you nerds.